Hello and welcome to the Inside Explorer 4.1 with EasyBuilder course, Session 11, Introduction to Spreadsheets. My name is Ron Duff and I am a technical instructor in Duluth, Georgia, which is where I'm speaking to you from today. On your screen right now you should have the first slide of the PowerPoint, Introduction to Spreadsheets, Section 11. In this session, we will show you how to correctly identify the Inside Explorer, how to correctly use the Inside Explorer, manage multiple networked Insight sensors from a single PC, save jobs, load jobs, and where to set acquisition settings from the spreadsheet. At the end of this course, you'll be able to navigate through the spreadsheet, copy, cut, and paste cells. So the obvious question is, why spreadsheets? Spreadsheets have many advantages, including allowing functionality beyond EasyBuilder. EasyBuilder is an interface that allows you to quickly build an application for your camera. In the background, while it's doing so, it is actually building a program on the spreadsheet. At any time, you can switch back and forth between the two, between EasyBuilder and spreadsheet. This is what we call round tripping. The idea being that you would start in EasyBuilder, construct as much of your application as possible, and then if needed, you could switch to the spreadsheet where you could, as it says on the screen now, allow small and complete customization. So you could go beyond EasyBuilder. You could also use advanced logic statements, ands, ors, etc. And it also allows you to create custom operator interfaces. Operator interfaces that you could display on your third-party or Vision View system. Some of the sample applications within the spreadsheet: image processing and other advanced tools. The one shown is an image filter called binarization. You can see that it took an image that's made up of a lot of different levels of gray and switch them all to ones, 255 or zeros, whites and blacks. Again, you can also use advanced logics, ands, ors, which is something we're going to go through today in this session, and create custom operator interface. On the screen there, you see the spreadsheet in the background. Once you click on the custom interface button, you now see the image as well as the interface that you created. How do you access the spreadsheet? Under the View in the Inside Explorer, you can drop down to Spreadsheet View, or you can use the combination of keystrokes Control-Shift+V. And again, you can switch back and forth at any time, what we call round tripping. Once you've opened the spreadsheet view, you have the option of clicking on the network tool, which is across the toolbox, or you can actually just go to View and you can call up the network. What will show up there are all of your emulators and cameras attached to your network. In this middle pane, this is where the spreadsheet is displayed. It's also where the image is displayed. You can see in this case, in the background behind the spreadsheet is a picture of the gasket. That is the picture that is either being presently viewed by the camera, or it could be something you have loaded, a static image. Notice also in the spreadsheet that cell A0 always is occupied with a tool called Image. You can also, inside the spreadsheet view, click on the Files pane or the Files tool, or under View, click Inside Files. It will show you all of the files stored in the camera that you're currently connected to. In this case, you can see there are several jobs inside this camera: gasket demo, my blob, etc. You also have a file called host.net, which is all of your network information. You have several image files. Those are the current image in full, half, and quarter resolution. And you also have a file called proc.set, which is your user list, etc., basically all of your settings. To the right of the image and to the right of the spreadsheet, you have the palette. In the palette, you have two tabs, functions and snippets. More to come on that as we proceed. Again, across the top, you have shortcut buttons. You have many different shortcut buttons, and you can actually customize which shortcut buttons you want to display. So you could display all of them as shown in this screenshot, or if there's only a few that you use, you can actually go and scale them down. Also across the top, you have the drop-down menus, File, Edit, View, etc. Basically what you'll find is you can do anything either as a shortcut or as a drop-down menu, whichever you prefer. Also, let me point out while we've got the screenshot in front of us, on the bottom it says, that's the title bar from Inside Explorer. You'll notice next, after Inside Explorer, it says admin. Admin would be the user. Then within the brackets is the camera that you're currently connected to. In this case, the name of the camera is IS5400_007 ECA. Next is the name of the job that's currently running, gasket_demo in this case. A lot of information is displayed there right in front of you. This way you can always be sure that you are indeed connected to the camera, the correct camera, and which job is running. You also, across the top in the shortcut buttons, you have shortcut buttons that allow you to start a new job, load an existing job, save jobs. You also can record and play back images. So how do you control your camera? How do you log on to a camera? First of all, you call up the network pane, find your camera in the list, and double-click on it. As soon as you do that, a spreadsheet will load behind it. Also notice, before I switch here, notice that in the screenshot on the top you can see that we are logged on to IS5400_007. And next to the camera, you can see an icon of a spreadsheet. That's another quick visual cue of which camera or emulator you're connected to. Emulator. Now above the camera in this screenshot, you can see an emulator, Ed Services 10. You notice the icon next to it is of a PC. You can see that cameras and emulators have different icons. One of the common problems we see are operators think that they're logged on to a camera when they're actually logged on to an emulator. Emulator being just your PC. This is something that you would use the emulator to create the job before you load it on the camera to actually run live. There's many functions that are not available on the emulator. For example, using a camera, be taking a picture, because of course on your PC you don't have a camera. How to change image settings. Once you've logged on to the camera that I showed you before, the spreadsheet that shows up will always be occupied in cell A0 with a tool called Image. If you were to double-click on that tool, meaning just go into the spreadsheet and double-click on cell A0, the property sheet for that tool will show up. And you'll see that the full name of that tool is Acquire Image. This is the tool that actually goes out, takes the image from the camera, and passes it on. You'll notice, for example, in this case, the property sheet for image acquires up, and the trigger is highlighted, and we've had the trigger set for continuous. But once you've called that up and set it, you say OK. So again, you can see that the trigger is highlighted in the screenshot. If you were to click on the drop-down menu, you can see that there are several options: camera, continuous, external, manual, and network. Camera means an actual hardware trigger. That means that you have a physical wire connected when you're using a high-speed trigger. A trigger could be coming from anywhere. Most often, in that case, you would be bringing in the camera from a photo eye, as an example. Every time your part goes in front of the photo eye, it comes out and it triggers the camera to take an image. Another option there is continuous. Continuous is just how it sounds. It acquires the image, runs a job, and repeats that over and over again. External is a little bit different. External means you're using a discrete input line. You're not using the hardware trigger, but you're using one of the discrete inputs. Manual means that you're going to trigger the camera from your PC or from a control pad on a 3400. This would be something, again, that you would use in the testing phase, not something, for the most part, that you would ever use when you're actually running the job live. And the last option there is network. Network, we'll get to a little bit more later in the course, but network triggers allow you to trigger one camera from another. You set up, you'll see the slide coming up, talks about a slave-master relationship. So whichever one, the camera that's sending the trigger is the master, the camera that's receiving the trigger is the slave. Some of the other parameters there you see, beyond the trigger. Exposure time, where you can set in milliseconds. You can turn on or turn off the automatic exposure. You can also tell the camera where to start the acquiring of image. In EasyBuilder, this was a functionality, for example, you don't have. It's always going to take an image of the entire FOV, the entire field of view. In this case, for example, if you have a part that is only filling a quarter of the image, a quarter of the field of view, why waste the time and the memory of taking an image of the entire field of view? So you could actually go in and say, no, I only want to take an image of that quarter of the field of view where the part is located. Next is a light control setting for the LED ring. Most of our cameras come with a light ring installed on them, the 5400 series, although that is considered an option. You can set the video gain for the camera, and you can set the video brightness for the camera. Next is orientation, where you can set normal, mirrored, flipped, or rotate 180 degrees. As you can see there in the note, this is not available in the color cameras or in the 3400. The next one there, network trigger, again, that goes back to using the network trigger from one camera to another. More on that to come. You can see there the master and slave setup. And last but not least is the buffer mode. You could either run the buffer overlapped or single. A spreadsheet is a document automatically formatted into rows and columns. Columns are lettered, rows are numbered. Very much like an Excel spreadsheet. Each location is called a cell and is donated by column and row. For example, you saw that the Acquire Image tool resides in cell A0, meaning column A, row 0. And the power of the spreadsheet, one of the things you can do in the spreadsheet that you can't do in EasyBuilder, is establish dependencies. Dependencies mean the product of one cell influences the product of another cell. This is a way that you can use dependencies along with your complex logic. Now the logic, a few of the basics, there are two types of references, absolute references and relative references. So for example, under absolute, the example shown here, it says A5 equals $A, $3 plus $A, $4. The dollar sign before the column in the row is how you know that that is an absolute reference. But you can see if you copy that from one cell to another, that formula, it stays absolutely the same. So here, in this case, we copied what was in cell A5 into cell B5, and the formula stayed exactly the same. Absolute A3 plus absolute A4. In a relative reference, first of all, you notice that in the formula there are no dollar signs. That's how you know that it is a relative reference. So in this particular case, in cell A5, we have A3 plus A4, cell A3 plus cell A4. But note when you copy it into another cell, in this case into cell B5, the formula is no longer A3 plus A4, it's B3 plus B4. So it's relative in the terms to its position on the spreadsheet. So to create a reference, absolute or relative, along the top there is a shortcut button. One for the absolute, that is a spreadsheet with a dollar sign on it. And to the right of it is the relative reference, which is an icon that just shows the spreadsheet. So you would click on absolute or relative first. As soon as you do that, the cursor changes, as you can see here in the screenshot. It includes a spreadsheet when you move your mouse. And you click on the cell that you want to reference. You would then type in your function, your plus, minus, whatever you wanted to do there, and then click on the next cell you want to reference. So again, that would be absolute. Click on the absolute or relative cell, absolute or relative shortcut button. Click on the cell, put in your formula, click on the absolute or relative cell. When you're done, I'll show you the next screen. There is a green arrow. You can see it here in this screenshot to the left of the formula bar. You click the green arrow to accept it. You could also, by the way, just type in the formula. You could just type in A2 plus B2 plus, etc. So after you've completed your reference, here is a good picture of the accept and cancel. So after you've completed your formula, you want to accept it, you can click on the green button. If you want to cancel it, you click on the red X. You can also use the Enter key instead of clicking on Accept, or the Escape key to cancel rather than clicking on the Cancel shortcut. How to enter references, formulas and references. To enter a formula reference, follow these easy steps. Again, select an empty cell, click in the formula bar. So you can see in these screenshots, we clicked on cell C2. And as soon as we did that, to the left of the formula bar now it says C2 equals. So then we would click on either absolute or relative. Click on the cells we want to use as references, and then click the green check mark or hit the Enter key. There are many different mathematical functions, as you can see here in the list. This all shows up under the palette, under the Functions tab. As you can see under Mathematics there are many different functions available. And, if, in range, not, or, etc. And there are also many other functions there. In this case, this particular screenshot, we're looking at lookup functions, math functions, statistic functions, and trigonometry functions. So under logic, again, you would have and, if, in range, not, etc. Lookup would be choose, switch, etc. Under the math, you have more complicated functions like exponential, round, square root. You have statistical functions, mean, max, min, and then your trigonometry functions, cosine, sine, tangent, etc. Again, these are mathematical functions that you can add to the spreadsheet. This is one of the items that gives you the power to control the spreadsheet beyond what you can do in EasyBuilder. Now on the bottom here are 4 examples of mathematical functions: if, and, in range, not. And we're going to look at each of those right now as an example. So the first function is the decision statement if. Along the top in the red there, you can see it says if, and in parentheses, 3 strings. Condition, comma, true value, comma, false value. So the position of those statements, the position of those strings is important. So in this case, if the condition, that would be string 1, if it's true, this condition, it would display whatever is in the second position of string 2, the true value, and the third position there is the false value, which would be string 3. Now, one thing to keep in mind with these formulas is 0 is a false statement, everything else is true. That becomes particularly confusing when you get into negative numbers. You would assume a negative number means false. But no, only 0 is false. Anything else is true. Now in this example, on the bottom here, you can see that in cell A1 we have 200, and then in cell A2 we have an if statement. It says if A1 is less than 128. So is A1 less than 28? Well, it says that A1 is 200. Is 200 less than 128? No, it's not. So that is a false statement. In the formula, it says that if it's a true statement, to display the word good. If you have text inside quotation marks, that means to actually display the text. The third string, in this case, is bad. So since the condition is false, I'm going to go to the false value, string 3, and the product would be the word bad. As you can see there. The next decision, the next function, is an AND statement. Again, along the top there is the syntax for an AND statement, and then in parentheses, condition 0, comma, condition 1, comma, condition 2, and so forth. So an AND statement means every one of those conditions must be true for the statement to be true. Any one of the conditions that is not true, then the result is false. And again, keep in mind that only 0 is false. Anything else, any other number is true. So let's have a look down on the bottom. We can see that in cell A1 we have 23, in cell B1 we have 10, and in cell C1 we have 22. When we look at D1, cell D1, we can see sort of a complex formula there. If you look, you can see we have an AND statement within an if statement. In a case like this, you always want to start in the middle, the most basic of the logic statements. In this case, the AND statement. So it says, and A1 is greater than B1. So A1 is 23, and B1 is 10. So is 23 greater than 10? Yes. In the second condition, or condition 1, it says A1 is less than C1. So is 23 less than 22? No, it's not. So again, so A1 is greater than B1, meaning 23 is greater than B1. That condition is true. But the second condition, or condition 1, A1, 23 is less than C1, 22. And we know that 23 is not less than 22. So the result of the AND statement is false. So now if we look at the if statement, if false, that's our condition, if false, comma 1, comma minus 1. So if the condition is false, we go to the third string, which is minus 1. So the result of the statement in cell D1 is very good, very good. D1. Excuse me, D1 now, the result is minus 1. Let's move on now to the in-range function. Along the top again, here is your syntax. In-range, parentheses, value, comma, minimum value, comma, maximum value. So is this value, is this number between the minimum and the maximum? So moving down to the example, in this case, in cell A1 we have 23. In In cell B1 we have 10. In cell C1 we have 22. The formula in this case is in F1, in range C1. C1 is 22. So that is our value. B1 equals 10. So that's our minimum. A1 is 23. That's our maximum. So the logic statement is saying, is 22 between 10 and 23? Yes. So this is a true statement. So the result would be a 1. The next function is a not function. Pretty straightforward. Not in parentheses condition. So whatever is in the condition, the result is going to be the opposite. So in this case, along the bottom, you can see that we have a not statement within an if statement. So in cell D1, again, let's start on the basic, the middle formula here. So B7 equals 92. Says that 92 is greater than 95. Well, that's not true. But since it's a not statement, that means it is true. So again, B7, 92 is greater than 95. That's false. That's false. So the result of the not statement is true. So now if we move out to the if statement, if true, comma, 0, comma, 1. Again, in this case, then, the true result would be 0. And that would be the product in D1. Cell D1 would be a 0. Now that's a little bit confusing because you would think that a true statement would be a 1 and a false statement would be 0. But that's not necessarily true. It's however you have the formula formatted, however you have the string determined within the formula. So here are some more examples. There's 4 examples along the bottom. I'd like for you to take a minute and see if you can figure those out for your own. Then I will help you. I'll give you just 30 seconds or so to have a look at those. Okay, so let's have a look here. In the first example, within cell A6, we have the statement, if A2 is greater than 7, comma, high, comma, low. So again, in an if statement, the condition, the first string, A2 is greater than 7. A2, we can see, is 6. So is 6 greater than 7? No, that is not true. So if it's a false statement, we go through the third string, in this case, which is the word low. We were correct. In the next example, we have a not statement within an if statement. So we're going to start in the middle with the not statement, which will be our condition. So it says not B2 is greater than 128. So B2 is 244.5. Is 244.5 greater than 128? Yes, that is a true statement. But since it's within a not, that means do the opposite, false. So if false, we go to the third string, which is the word fail. Correct. The third example, in cell D1, we have a formula. Again, this is an and statement within an if statement. So we're going to look at the and first. Keep in mind, in an and, everything must be true for the statement to be true. So A2 is greater than 5. A2 is 6. Is 6 greater than 5? Yes, so that's true. Then A2 is less than B2. A2 is 6. B2 is 244. So is 6 less than 244? Yes. So both of those conditions are true. The result of our and statement is true. So now if we look at our if statement, if true, minus 1. So the result would be minus 1. correct. The next example, in cell F1, we have an in-range statement within a not statement. So again, it started in the middle with the in-range statement. It says A2, which is our value, A2 is 6, is A6 between 0 and 244? Yes, 6 is definitely between 0 and 244. So that is true. But we're within a not statement, so the result would be false, or 0. So those formulas, when you first look at them, look pretty complicated, but if you break it down the way we just did, you can see that it's really not that complicated. And the good news is the computer does it for you. And how do you enter these functions we just talked about? Again, you'll find these functions in the palette under the Functions tab. You would just open up the particular toolbox you want to look at. In this case, you can see we went within Mathematics under Logic, and we found the if statement. We can just take the if statement and click on it with our mouse and drag it and drop it right into a cell in the spreadsheet. Once you've done that, you go and you make your references, then click on the green arrow or hit the Enter key to accept those changes. Another way to enter functions is you can go to the target cell, the cell in question, click on it, and then you can click the function button. The function button is immediately to the right of the absolute and relative shortcut buttons, an F with an X, meaning function what? What function do you want to use? When you click on that button, you'll see a list of all of the tools come up. You can select the one you want, and then say enter and put it right into the function bar. So what did we learn during this session? We showed you how the Insight Explorer manages multiple network Insight systems from a single PC. We showed you a spreadsheet that's composed of cells, and the highlighted cell within the spreadsheet is called the active cell. The spreadsheet and its current contents are called the job. And again, keep in mind this job is stored within the camera. You can save jobs into the camera, you can save jobs onto the PC, but when you're running a job, it is always running on the camera, with the exception of the emulator. If you're running a job on an emulator, then obviously it's running on your PC. The live job running in your plant is always running on the camera. You also, under the Help menu, have Help, Searchable Help. One of the nice things you can do within Explorer, if you have a property sheet open, as an example, earlier in the session we had the Acquire Image property sheet up. If you have that open, you can hit the F1 key on your keyboard. It will automatically take you to the correct help file for the particular tool that you have open. Or at any time you can go under the Help menu and call up the help file, and you can search within the help file. Again, I showed you some of the math functions, some of the that are used for the complicated equations. In our case, we went through the if, and, not, and in-range statements. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to the spreadsheet. And you can see now on your screen that we are looking at Insight Explorer. If you look at the toolbar, you can see that I am currently logged in as the administrator. The name of my camera is rduff_ISM1400. That's the model in this case, an Insight Micro 1400. And the job that I'm running currently is called spreadsheet.job. And below, you can see all of the shortcut keys along the top. Right now, you can see in the spreadsheet that cell A0 is active, which is, again, is that Acquire Image tool. And because it's active within the formula bar right now, you can see it says A0 equals Acquire Image, etc. Now, to get to the property sheet, in this case, I'll just double-click on the cell A0, the Acquire Image tool. You can see the spreadsheet come up. Excuse me, you can see the property sheet come up. In this case, you can see that I have the trigger set to manual. I have the exposure set to 8 milliseconds. I have the automatic exposure disabled. I am currently looking at the entire field of view, 0 to 480, and etc. You can look down, and you can. This is where you would again set all of your required image settings. If you look further at the spreadsheet, you can see that I have added several other tools. Patterns here is a location tool, which you saw within EasyBuilder. Exact histogram is a tool that's unique, actually, to the spreadsheet, but it's basically just a histogram tool, like you saw in EasyBuilder. We added a tool called the Find Segment tool. This would be very similar to the Distance tool you saw in an EasyBuilder. And then down on the bottom here, I have an ID code tool, a read ID code tool. Basically, one of the ID codes that you would have seen in EasyBuilder. The text here that I have in green in this case, this is all text that I wrote myself, just to remind me what tools I have in the spreadsheet. I could also, and I often would write, what is that tool being used to? But again, that's up to you in the spreadsheet. To the left of each tool, I put in some LEDs, just some visual reminders or visual cues as to whether that tool is passing or failing. To the right of the tool, you can see these settings. These would show up in EasyBuilder in your settings screen. In this case, they're all cells within the spreadsheet. To the right of each of the tools, I've created, first of all, a text statement, just logic. Under that, I put in some advanced logic. In this case, I'm just highlighted cell J3. If you look at the formula bar, the statement that I entered there was if H3 is greater than 90, comma 1, comma 0. So there's a logic statement I'm using within the spreadsheet. H3, if you'll notice, H3 is the score. So I'm saying if the score is greater than 90, to display a 1. If it's not greater than 90, to display a 0. On the extract histogram tool, again, my logic statement I created, if D7 is greater than 20, comma 1, comma 0. D7 is the contrast. So my logic statement, if contrast is greater than 20, display a 1. If it's not, display a 0. And that's how you utilize logic within the spreadsheet. Also, notice while I've got this particular spreadsheet open, down along the bottom here, I created a custom interface. It's just in the spreadsheet. So along the top here, you have a shortcut button called Custom View. If I click on it, you can see now that the image is displayed along with any graphics that I have chosen to display. And then in the top left-hand corner, in this case, my custom interface. Fixture found, screw found, distance good, and whatever the ID code it's read. And this, if you have a custom HMI interface, or if you're using Vision View, this is exactly what you would see there. And again, this is one of the bits of functionality in the spreadsheet that's not available in Easy. So I'm going to go now out of the custom view, and we're going to start a new job. So under File, New Job, I'm going to say yes. And you can see that the new job comes up, and as I mentioned earlier, in any spreadsheet job, cell A0 is always going to be taken right off the bat by the Acquire Image tool. Now, if I want to enter a formula, all I do is choose a cell. In this case, I'll choose cell B2. You start with either an absolute, which is, again is this tool here, the spreadsheet with the $ in front of it, or a relative reference, which is just the icon of the spreadsheet. Click on it. Then click on the cell you want to reference. Here, I'll click on B5. You can see right now in the formula bar it says B2 equals B5. And I can accept that. Right now, that is my formula. Or I can just come in, I can highlight a cell. I could have just typed B2 if I preferred. Click the green arrow. Or I'll click on another cell, click on the formula bar. And if you notice when I did that, the cursor changed. It has a note even. It says click to insert a reference. So now if I go in to push on any cell, click on any cell, it automatically brings that cell number, a row and column, into the formula bar, E5. And if you'll notice, this is probably hard to see on a remote site, but the E5 in the formula bar is blue, and the outline of the cell is blue. So now I'll put in, for example, plus, and I'll click on another cell, in this case G10. If you'll notice, the G10 is orange, and the cell is G10. So there's a little visual reference as to which cell, or which cell value is which in the formula bar. And again, once you've completed that, you can either click on the green arrow, which is OK. If you want to cancel it, you click on the red arrow. Or you could just hit the Enter key, as I'm about to do, on my keyboard. Any of those will work. As far as the functions are concerned, again, if you look to the right, here is our palette. There are two tabs, Functions tab, Snippets tab. The functions we looked at today were under the Mathematics toolbox. I clicked on next here, next to Mathematics. And those were logic statements. And there we go. Here's our AND statement, if statement, in range, and not. That's what we looked at today. So to utilize one of those functions, you can just, for example, you have to take the not statement, drag it into a cell. You can see now that we have not parentheses. Again, notice our cursor's changed. We can go out and we could choose cell. I chose cell B2. And then I'll hit either the green arrow in this case, or I could hit the Enter key. So look at our formula. Not B2. Well, B2 is 0, so not 0 is 1. Let's try another one. How about an in-range statement? So I'll grab in range, I'll drag it into a cell, in this case E4. So E4, it says, in the syntax of an in-range statement, first we do the value. The value we're going to choose cell E9, which is a 1, comma, and we're going to choose cell B2, which is a 0, comma, and then we're going to choose cell B12, which is also a 0, parentheses. So before I hit the Enter key, again, notice that each of the cells is a different color in the formula bar and a different cell in that same color within the actual spreadsheet. But before I hit the Enter key, what do you expect the result to be? So in range condition 1. Is 1 between 0 and 0? No. So the product is 0, false. So that's the end of our session today, Intro to Spreadsheets. We will, in the spreadsheets to come, look at more detail of utilizing different functions within the spreadsheet. We'll look at creating a custom interface, and we hope to see you then next Friday at 2 o'clock. And unless there are any questions out there, have a great afternoon and a great weekend.